Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the 2022 Cooperative Hall of Fame induction ceremony. My name is Rich LaRochelle. I'm the chair of the board of directors. Hey. Okay, we'll start again here. Welcome to the 2022 Cooperative Hall of Fame induction ceremony. We're going to start out by asking everyone to turn off the sound on your cell phones because we're recording this and some people are looking at it live, so keep your cell phones on but turn off the sound. My name is Rich LaRochelle. I'm the chair of the board of directors of the Cooperative Development Foundation. We're your host for this evening. Thank you for being here to honor 5 outstanding cooperators and to support the continued good work of the Cooperative Development Foundation. It's fitting that in an event recognizing the lifetime accomplishments of these inductees that we should also benefit cooperative development. For 77 years, CDF has promoted community, economic, and social development through cooperatives. Over the past 28 years, CDF has granted or loaned more than $10 million to help people improve their communities through cooperatives. Our work could not be done without the support of all of you in this room. I particularly want to acknowledge our Hall of Fame sponsors, the Capital Impact Partners, CFC, CoBank, National Cooperative Bank, National Co-op Grocers, Nationwide, and NRECA. Thanks also to our banquet sponsors listed on the banners to my right and left, as well as our table sponsors that are listed in your program. Thank you all. So tonight, we're honored to have this time to think about and honor the lifelong cooperative heroes, the 5 people we're honoring today, but we also want to welcome the emerging cooperative leaders and scholars. We have 23 of them here with us tonight. And could I ask you to stand? Emerging co-op leaders, stand and be recognized. Thank you. Let me make a special thanks to our wonderful sponsors of the program that could bring these 23 future leaders here for this week of impact, for a course from the International Center for Cooperative Management and Networking. Thanks to NCBA CLUSA, CHS Foundation, CUNA Mutual Group, CoBank, Native American Agricultural Fund, and the Chuck Snyder Do Well to Do Good Fund. Thank you all. I also want to take a moment to recognize our fellow cooperators from the Ukraine who are here with us today. Principle 6, cooperatives helping cooperatives, is most important during this time. So the title of this Impact Conference is Forward Together, and that's what the message we have for our fellow cooperators from the Ukraine. CDF and CBA CLUSA helped galvanize U.S. cooperative support for the Ukrainian cooperatives, and we thank the many in this room who contributed. To our fellow Ukrainian cooperatives and all those who you represent in your country, we cannot imagine what you're going through, but we want you to know that we're here for you. Thank you for all the work you're doing to help Ukraine meet its current and future needs in rebuilding. Please welcome El Yak Garahovsky, the chair of the Co-op Ukraine's Board of Directors, and his fellow colleagues. I would ask you to stand again, and we really appreciate you being with us. Now, it's our tradition at these meetings to begin together with a moment of reflection. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Reverend Ginger Gaines Chirelli. Please come to the podium and give the invocation. Ginger is the senior pastor at Foundry United Methodist Church. Ginger.
Good evening, everyone, and blessings to one and all. I bring you greetings from Foundry United Methodist Church, the historic congregation that sits at 16th and P Street Northwest here in our city, and also a proud member of the Community Purchasing Alliance and benefactor. We give thanks to God every day for the CPA. Let us now, on this day following the highest holy days of our Jewish siblings, join them in giving thanks for God's goodness and mercy, and for our call to respond with love and justice. We give thanks for the turn of seasons, reminding us of the gift of this precious earth, its beauty, its power, its bounty. May we learn to walk more gently upon the earth. We give thanks for this nation in which we live and serve. May we honor the original nations of this land and all those with whom we now share this land and place. May we acknowledge one another as persons of dignity and sacred worth. We give thanks for all who have worked to provide the food that is before us and all whose labor makes tonight's gathering and feast possible. May they know their efforts do not go unheeded and that they are deeply appreciated. We give thanks for this occasion in which we celebrate the good and faithful work of those being honored. The eternal Ella, Allan, Paul, Gary, and Dan. May their vision and commitment inspire us to believe that when we offer our unique gifts and work together, positive change is possible. Loving God, we ask you would be present among us this night, this gathering filled with persons who labor for the good of others, the good of the earth, the good of the world, the common good. Among us are many who are weary, and we give thanks for this opportunity to celebrate, to enjoy time with friends and co-laborers, and to be renewed and encouraged for the way ahead. Honoring all the holy names by which you are called, I pray in the name of Jesus. Amen.
It's now time to introduce tonight's Master of Ceremony, Kathy Mahone. Kathy is the President and CEO of Inclusive, which represents community development credit unions. Kathy?
Thank you, Rich. Wow, it is an honor to be here. And this is a rowdy group, so I'm going to have to try to keep the stage a bit here. Tonight, we come together from many cooperative sectors and many parts of the country to honor our co-op heroes. The Cooperative Hall of Fame is about recognizing people who are and were committed to building cooperatives as humane and equitable businesses to give an economic voice to workers, consumers, farmers, and small businesses. We honor the commitment and dedication of those who understand how cooperatives can make a meaningful and lasting difference in the lives of members, of workers, of customers, and of all the communities in which they serve. We hope to take away from this event inspiration and renewed energy for our own work advancing cooperatives and inclusion as a better way of doing business and to help ensure all are included in and can benefit from a truly inclusive economy. One of the highlights of the Hall of Fame is the reunion of past inductees. And it's an annual gathering of a very special group of cooperativists. So before we get started with the rest of our evening today, I'm going to ask us to all recognize and applaud the members of the Hall of Fame who are here with us tonight. And as I call your name, I'm going to ask each one of you to please join us here on the stage for a group picture. So you got some work to do, guys. It's not done. You're not done yet. So the Cooperative Hall of Fame inductees that are attending tonight's ceremony: Andy Riker. Come on up, Andy. Ann Hoyt. Barry Silver. Jessica Gordon Nimhar. Jim Jones. Judy Z. Watts. Karen Zimbelman. Larry Blanchard. Marilyn Scholl. Mike Mercer. Rich LaRochelle. Rich, come on back. And Terry Lewis. Come on up and let's get a photo of all of you guys.
Oh, we're supposed to be over here. This side.
And Mr. Martin Lowry. Who needs no introduction?
All you guys are...
We'll come this way. They want us down. Come on.
Oh.
We miss you, Chuck. We miss you, Bill.
Thank you.
Did I miss anybody? We got everybody. All right. One more round of applause for our former inductees to the Hall of Fame. You are all heroes, and we are so thrilled to have so many of you with us tonight. The complete roster of the Hall of Fame members is at the back of your program, so please take a look at all of these legends of our movement. I would also like to invite the Cooperative Leaders and Scholars group for a picture on stage with our co-op heroes. Did I miss our co-op heroes? I'm sorry. Come on up. And now our Cooperative Leaders and Scholars. Come on up, guys.
Wow.
After this shot, I'm going to call up the Hall of Fame inductees one more time because I missed it. You're supposed to get a photo with the scholars.
I'll stand here.
Yeah, you should be. Yeah.
I'm not getting the short
You
time.
should probably be right in front.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah, you gotta be in the front. I'll be in the. You're in the back. I'll be in the front. I love your outfit. I also love Vincent's outfit. Oh, where are we looking there? Where do we look?
Shar! Hi, Shar!
Alrighty. Now we need the Hall of Famers.
Where do we
Hall
look?
of Famers.
Where do we
Hall
look?
of Famers.
Wait, can we go one with Chrissy? Is that it? No. You got
Okay, so while everyone else is getting ready to enjoy their meal, we've got the Hall of Fame inductees one more time to come back to the stage. That was my bad. So the Hall of Fame inductees, that's Andy. That is Martin Lowry, Ann Hoyt, Barry Silver, Jessica Gordon Nimhar, Jim Jones, Judy Ziewatz, Karen Zimbelman, Larry Blanchard, Marilyn Skoll, Mike Mercer, Rich.
Everybody's doing it. Why? No. Cut it out. I hate it. I think this is hilarious. I've never done this before. Something like this.
Throw your money at us. It would be blocking our faces.
I guess we can't complain.
Please.
That is an important question.
I'd like to talk about a grant for my cooperative.
I have a lot of it.
Go up.
Go on. Thank you. And now
I start to look like the
Hi, everybody. We are ready to get started with our program. Oh man, this really is a rowdy bunch. Hello. We're gonna give you to the count of 10. We're gonna do a little, Hi, everyone. We have too good of a program to keep you waiting. We have some unbelievable stories and people to have you meet tonight in this next 2022 induction ceremony. So we want to get started. We want to make sure you have a full opportunity to hear about the amazing work of this year's induction group or inductees. So I want to welcome you back, and let's get down to business. Tonight, we pay tribute to 5 outstanding leaders: Ella Baker, Allan Gallant, Paul Hazen. Got the room stacked over there. Gary Oakland. And Dan Waddle. Each is a true cooperative hero. Their contributions have made a lasting mark on cooperatives and the lives of the people and communities in which they've worked. We thank the selection committee and the board of NCBA CLUSA for their work in bringing these heroes to us tonight. So tonight we're going to honor each inductee individually with a video presentation, and then we're going to invite words from the nominating organizations and people, and then we'll bring you the inductees. After the video presentation, we will then ask the inductee and the nominating organization to come to the podium. So let's get started. Do we have the first award?
A historian once called Ella Josephine Baker one of the most consequential and yet least honored people in America. While her face is on a postage stamp and she is known by historians for her pivotal role in the civil rights movement, her name is unfamiliar to most Americans. Her anonymity was fine with her. In both her personal and her work life, she intentionally avoided the spotlight.
We're at the home of Ella Josephine Baker in Littleton, North Carolina. Welcome. And behind me, this home still stands today after many years. Can you imagine? This was her home place from the time she was 7 years old. And to the upper right-hand corner of the upper level of the house was her room, where she studied late into the night. And so, being here on this property, it's only fitting that I share with you one of her quotes. Courage. Every great movement started as we have started. Do not feel discouraged because in our few months of life, we have not rivaled some long-established cooperative venture. Each successful cooperative enterprise has taken much time and energy and sacrifice to establish. Nothing worth accomplishing is ever achieved without work. Joella was born in 1903 in Norfolk, Virginia, but at an early age returned to her mother's close-knit African-American community in Warren County, North Carolina, where families pooled resources to help each other survive and thrive in the aftermath of slavery, the Great Migration, and Jim Crow. The place where Ella grew up and where I grew up as a fifth generation is where she learned the courage to act on her own and the importance of working together. Close-knit, pooled resources, value of land, understanding need to support each other with dignity. It is not surprising that Ella wanted to build cooperatives. Her parents and community taught her these valuable life lessons. Her lessons and spirit live on in Warren County.
Before Ella Jo Baker worked for the WPA, before she was one of the most effective field officers of the NAACP, before she co-founded SCLC with Martin Luther King Jr., before she advised SNCC, she was a cooperator, a co-op organizer, a co-op educator. As a co-founder and director in the 1930s of one of the most important African-American co-op development organizations, the Young Negroes Cooperative League, she created a lasting legacy for the co-op movement, showing Black youth and women in particular the benefits of cooperative economies, not just for survival, but also for advancement. I argue in my book, Collective Courage, that Baker's early experiences in the co-op movement contributed significantly to her later successes developing innovative grassroots leadership and organizing strategies for civil rights. She achieved this in great part because of her training in and experience with economic democracy and member participation in the co-op movement. This co-op hero applied the lessons that she learned from her co-op roots to her lifelong organizing work, becoming a world-renowned civil rights activist.
What struck me about Ella Jo Baker was the combination of her being so clearly good at what she did, yet also just being so human. She was a remarkable woman who put her many skills to work consistently and effectively throughout her lifetime in all different contexts. But at the same time, you really got a sense that she was just really an enjoyable person. One of my favorite things we found out during the research was Ella Jo Baker loved to play baseball. "I'd rather play baseball than eat," she once told an interviewer. She loved to have fun, to work with others, to be on a team, and I think you could really see that in her work and in her life. She embodied that sense of camaraderie that's so special about cooperatives. Ella Jo Baker spent a lifetime serving the common good, but her commitment to cooperatives and economic empowerment has never been adequately recognized. That's what the Unsung Heroes Award is all about. As we continue to reckon with our past, we need to better understand the role of cooperation in our history. The history of all of us, especially the role it's played in empowering Black communities devastated by the impact of slavery. As instruments of dignity, respect, fairness, and agency, cooperatives can empower us and bring us together now, helping to create the kind of world we want to live in. We cannot truly address the challenges we face as a society, whether it's racial equity, injustice, poverty, access to health care, or climate change, unless we use our collective power. A truly inclusive economy requires it.
I had no idea of the extent of Ella Jo Baker's cooperative work until I started researching her for the Unsung Heroes project. I knew a little about her when we started the Ella Jo Baker Intentional Community Co-op, but I learned so much more about her passion for consumer cooperation, her focus on education, her vision for more and more co-ops and academy and even a factory. Her work her footprints from her work can also be seen in her transition to the civil rights movement. She did a lot of great work for the cooperative movement, and she inspired me as well.
Occasionally, Miss Baker allowed herself to be publicly acknowledged, but it was only in service to a greater purpose, to build support for the work of whatever organization wanted to honor her. It is in that spirit that we recognize her here as a visionary cooperator. We honor her for deploying the principles of cooperative democratic organization to protect and defend the rights of millions of Black Americans. Tonight, we are proud to induct Ella Jo Baker into the Cooperative Hall of Fame.
Is that amazing? And Ella Jo Baker is being recognized as the first unsung hero of the cooperative movement. So this year, we are beginning a new tradition, which is recognizing those who have gone unrecognized for too long, and she is the very first. I'd like to now ask Mr. Ellis Carr from Momentous Capital, Ellis, there you are, hi, to join me here at the podium. And Ellis is gonna present the inaugural Unsung Hero Award for Miss Ella Jo Baker.
Thank you, Kathy. Good evening, everybody. I'm incredibly honored to be here this evening to present the inaugural Unsung Hero Award. As Kathy mentioned, this new award is meant to recognize individuals whose contributions to cooperative have been made primarily prior to the inception of the Cooperative Hall of Fame in 1974. This award ensures that we honor those whose achievements have historically been unrecognized or suppressed. Tonight, that recognition, as we talked about, is for none other than Ella Jo Baker, a pioneer for cooperatives and civil rights. You'll be hearing more about Ms. Baker in just a moment for Dr. Jessica Gordon Nimhar. The principles of self-determination and justice that Ms. Baker manifested in her work are near and dear to my heart. I would be remiss if I didn't say that if it were not for her work and others in the civil rights movement, I would not be standing in front of you today. I am here because I'm standing on the shoulders of giants who put themselves in harm's way so that I may have opportunities that they didn't. And for that, I am grateful. The principles of self-determination and justice that Ms. Baker manifested in her work are foundational to the creation of my organization, which we are also celebrating this year as we mark Capital Impact Partners' 40th year anniversary. Capital Impact was created as a result of the 1978 Bank Act to support cooperative development in underserved communities. The commitment that followed the 1978 Bank Act recognized that cooperatives must play a critical role in advancing economic justice for more people across the country. Since our inception, we've lent over $300 million to cooperatives supporting an economic justice agenda focusing on giving people voice and choice to make the decisions that best align to their communities. Our work has supported increases in access to affordable housing, healthy food, and quality jobs through worker-owned co-op conversions. And in our partnership with the National Cooperative Bank, we've seeded new innovative ideas in the cooperative sector to advance the field. But while I'm really proud about the work that we've been able to do, much more work is required. That's why this year we developed a new equity investment capability to allow cooperatives and other socially impactful companies to think beyond debt to raise capital. Working together, as like many of you, we have come together with an organization CDC Small Business Finance to create momentous capital. We are really providing a wider continuum of knowledge, social, and financial capital for community leaders. These leaders, cooperatives, small business owners, and other local visionaries are the true architects of healthy, inclusive, and equitable communities. And we are honored to support them. As we continue our work with Momentous Capital, we will continue to embrace the cooperative model as a key tool to advancing social justice and economic justice. I look forward to working with each of you in this room to ensure that cooperatives and other leaders have the support they need to be successful. My hope is that we are able to honor the lineage and the legacy that Ms. Baker has provided for all of us. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Jessica Gordon Nimhar to talk.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks so much for that introduction. And congratulations to all the Hall of Famers, the new ones and the continuing ones. When Margaret Lund came to me with the idea of the Unsung Hero category for the Co-op Hall of Fame, I immediately resonated to the idea. She said she was thinking of all the co-op heroes that I resurrected in my research, and that there should be a way for us to know more about them and so many others from history that have been overlooked, marginalized, and actively oppressed, and to celebrate them. So we looked at the demographics of those who have been honored in the Hall of Fame. Women represented only 16% of the inductees, and only 11% of them without their spouses. African Americans were only 9% of the inductees. Latinx people, less than 1%. And there were no cooperators identified as Asian American or Native American. So we know that these communities all have developed cooperatives and have co-op histories, so we knew we could do better. So we thought starting this Unsung Hero would be a great idea. In addition, we wanted this to be a way to encourage new research so we could find more co-op heroes among us. So adding the funding, right, for the small research grants for people to identify achievements of historically overlooked cooperators, and to, give us a robust competitive pool, right? So we added the funding to it. So now we also can support especially students of color who do this research to find examples of cooperators in their communities. Luckily, CDF staff, the NCBA board, right, all thought our proposal was a good idea, so here we are, right, celebrating our first unsung hero, Ella Jo Baker. Just one more thing about the process before I say a little bit more about Ella Baker. We did have a robust research team for this beginning project. And we produced 3 Unsung Hero nominations. 1 for Ella Baker, 1 for Nanny Helen Burroughs, and 1 for Helena Wilson. If you don't know Nanny Helen Burroughs, a famous African-American educator and religious leader who co-founded Cooperative Industries of DC and other co-op activities in the 1930s. And Helena Wilson of Chicago and the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters Ladies Auxiliary, who started the Brotherhood Buying Club, the Chicago Eye Clinic Co-op, and many co-op study groups throughout the Brotherhood chapters in the 30s and 40s. So you'll be hearing more about them, hopefully, in the future. And we had this fabulous team of 3 researchers. 2 of my economics master's students at John Jay College, City University of New York, Ludi Thenor and Tatiana Malinova. And the 3rd was my dear friend and colleague, Adjoa Ifateo. who's a journalist she's a journalist, she's a co-op advocate herself, and co-founder of the Ella Baker Intentional Community Cooperative. They have a table right there. Her other co-founders are here as well, Linda Leeks and Tricia Kinch. So now, many thanks to Adjoa for the fantastic research she did. As some of you might have heard her today at the panel. She found lots of information that I had missed, right? Our knowledge and understanding about Ella Baker's role in the co-op movement is so much greater because of the investigative research Adjoa conducted. So thank you so much, Adjoa. Now, what to say in my last minute about one of my sheroes, Ella Jo Baker. She's perhaps best known for her role with young black activists in SNCC in the 1950s, the Student National Coordinating Committee, and for her articulation and advocacy for grassroots democratic leadership in the civil rights movement. But she was, as you know by now, the national director of the Young Negroes Cooperative League, which she co-founded in 1930. In 1931, we didn't say this in the video, she was awarded a scholarship to the Cooperative Institute of CLUSA at Brookwood Labor College. So she was an early CLUSA graduate. And she used that knowledge, right, in that first year to gather people together to create the Young Negroes Cooperative League and to pull off a conference in Pittsburgh in 1931 with 600 young black people to come talk about cooperatives and how to start a cooperative movement. No small feat in the middle of the Great Depression to get 600. We still don't get 600 black people at co-op meetings. And then she spent years doing co-op organizing, co-op education, creating a network of consumer and credit unions, consumer co-ops and credit unions in black communities around the country. Though she was a very modest person who preferred to operate behind the scenes, she again was well known for the civil rights work, but not for this cooperative work. And I want to end with the vision that she and the Young Negroes Cooperative League had, which was they wanted to create what we now would call a co-op commonwealth. They had this notion that wherever there were 5 people interested in co-ops, they would create a buying club, then that would graduate to a store, then the stores would connect with the other stores and create factories to feed this, to supply the stores. Every time you had a couple of stores and a co-op society, you would have a credit union. The credit unions would then federate into regional credit unions, and then the regional chapters of the Young Negroes Cooperative League would all work together to support the stores, the credit union, and other co-op activities. So that she really had this huge vision of what we could do. And I think that, to me, is the way we can end by honoring her, by remembering that vision of how we can pull all these co-ops together and really create a commonwealth. Thank you.
Oh my God, so inspiring. I'd now like to invite to the stage for a photo Cheryl Cogdal, Ella Baker's cousin, who's representing the family here tonight, along with Margaret Lund and Ashoa Ifateo, who you saw in the video and who you saw earlier on the panel. If you all could come up to the stage, we'd love to get a photo with you all. And
Margaret couldn't make it.
Oh, and Margaret, okay. Margaret can't make it, so it's going to be the rest of us. Come on up. So we're going to come over here, and there's no plaque. We don't have the plaque, but we do have, well, we're just going to get a photo. Yeah, we're going to get a photo. Should we move over? Can we move over a little bit that way? There we go. So inspiring, and the plaque is coming in April. That's another opportunity for an event. The next award, we're going to keep going. The next inductee is Allan Gallant. Allan Gallant was a galvanizing leader in food cooperatives for more than 40 years. So I'm going to ask you to please turn your attention to the video honoring Allan.
Allan Gallant was a big man with a giant heart, a wholesaler by birth and a cooperator by conviction. He knew the grocery store business inside out. For 60 years, he shared his knowledge with deep generosity and contagious enthusiasm. Allan was born in Baltimore in 1934 to a family of boys. Allan's father, Louis, was the most influential person in his life, but his mother, Sarah, was the force behind his accomplishments. Sarah's family-owned B. Green & Company were wholesale grocers to stores all around Baltimore. Sarah was determined that someday Allan would lead the family business. At the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business, Allan pledged Kappa Nu fraternity, making lifetime friends over all-night poker games. He also learned the essentials of running a successful business. By 22, he was a certified public accountant. Upon graduation in 1955, Allan returned to B. Green & Company, where he worked to learn every aspect of the business. Recognizing opportunity in emerging data processing technologies, he convinced his uncles to install the first random access computer in the wholesale grocery business. The trajectory of Allan's life changed in 1968 when Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. The subsequent riots and their aftermath transformed Allan's view of his city and his family's business. He began to notice that B. Green & Company had no minority-owned customers along its Baltimore delivery routes. His new perspective set him on the path toward his future. Allan joined local efforts to create opportunities for Black ownership of grocery stores. He joined the National Council for Equal Business Opportunities. With support from the Ford Foundation, Allan elevated his advocacy to the national level, assisting Black entrepreneurs in Mississippi, Chicago, and LA. This led him to envision a way to merge ethical business strategies with community development using the cooperative model. Eager to spread his ideas, Allan secured a grant from the Economic Development Administration to create a training program for community developers. One student in Allan's class caught his eye, an activist from Baltimore named Cheryl Cogdal. When Cheryl raised her hand to ask the difference between a credit and a debit, Allan felt challenged. He didn't know that this charming student would become his partner in life and work. Allan believed ferociously in accounting. If you could teach a person to read a financial statement, he reasoned, you could teach them how to run a business. Allan made it his mission to turn co-op enthusiasts into savvy business owners. Allan and colleagues opened a private consulting firm in Washington, D.C. One of their first clients was the Commercial Enterprise Development Corporation of Alaska. The CEDC had created a nonprofit to support and supply village co-op grocery stores, but the project was failing. Allan and his team crafted a plan to turn the business around. Impressed with the success of the project, the Alaska Commercial Company invited Allan to Seattle in 1977 to oversee the company's warehouse, distribution, and store operations. Ready for an adventure, Allan and Cheryl got married and bought a home on Mercer Island, where their son Sam was born. As AC grew under his leadership, Allan moved operations to Alaska, where goods could be held closer to distribution points. 11 stores grew to 23. 180 employees became 400. For the first time, half of AC's employees were Native Alaskans, as were 20% of store managers. Allan felt a special resonance with the emerging natural food co-op movement. When Puget Consumer Cooperative needed a better source of supply, he helped found the NutriSource Warehouse. When a consumer co-op in Berkeley struggled, he proposed a plan to obtain credit and financing. When Blooming Prairie Cooperative Warehouse members decided to sell, he helped forge a deal to benefit members and the greater co-op community alike. The result was the Blooming Prairie Foundation, now a primary funder of the Food Co-op Initiative and a distributor of millions to support cooperative innovation and development. The foundation was one of the proudest accomplishments of Allan's life. Above all, Allan was a beloved teacher and a mentor. At the new School for Democratic Management, he enthusiastically shared the secrets of business, finance, and cooperative management. As a keynote speaker at the 1991 CCMA, Allan showed cooperators how to honor the principles of democratic ownership while managing the bottom line. For his transformative contributions toward a more equitable economy, Allan received the CCMA Cooperative Service Award in 2019. Allan rejoined B. Green & Company in 1985 as Chief Financial Officer. He and Carol also looked for an opportunity to start a business in a community that needed support. Sam's Bagels opened in 1994 in Baltimore's Roland Park. The store quickly became a neighborhood gathering place and a favorite haunt of Allan's father, Louis. The Gallants loved Baltimore because they could be near their 5 children, 14 grandchildren, and 9 great-grandchildren. The love and noise of family life gave Allan great joy and satisfaction until the very end of his life. In notes for a planned memoir, he wrote in all caps, "Life is full of love and happiness." Allan was devoted to jazz, especially the music of Ella Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong, and Lead Belly. Good food was also important to him. Carol's tuna surprise, his Aunt Ducky's cheesecake, and Maryland blue crabs were among his favorites. Allan Gallant was a financial genius with a clear vision of a just economy. A beloved teacher, leader, and mentor, he showed the way to business success through democratic cooperation. For empowering communities to achieve self-sufficiency and for lovingly mentoring hundreds of cooperators, we recognize Allan Gallant with induction into the Cooperative Hall of Fame.
Would Stuart Reed, Executive Director of Food Co-op Initiative, and Anya Frist, Board Chair of Blooming Prairie Foundation, and Sam Gallant, please join me on the stage. Stuart and Anya, please make a few remarks.
Whoa, hard to follow that. Yeah. Allan couldn't be with us on stage today, but he is with us in spirit. His spirit has always been so big that it inspired me and thousands of others in our mission to create a more cooperative world. My own organization, Food Co-op Initiative, nominated Allan to the Hall of Fame for his decades of visionary work, but especially for the incredible support he gave to FCI. Through his advocacy, the Blooming Prairie Foundation became an early funder of our work, right from the day one, pretty much. And when times got tough, he proposed the audacious plan for us to become a registered 501c3 with a $1 million 5-year grant to ensure our survival. Without that support from the Blooming Prairie Foundation, we may not be here today. And without Allan's vision, the Blooming Prairie Foundation itself may never have been created. Allan, you were a friend, a mentor, and always there to encourage us. Thank you.
Hello. It's an honor to be here representing the Blooming Prairie Foundation, along with Stuart Reed from the Food Co-op Initiative, to celebrate Allan Gallant's induction into the Co-op Hall of Fame. Allan was instrumental in creating and supporting the Blooming Prairie Foundation, and in the 20 years I knew him, I grew to admire and love his wit and wisdom, his wild ideas and white papers, his generosity and thoughtfulness, and his enthusiasm for the cooperative business model and joyful collaboration. Allan is a treasured soul, and he is missed. Here's to Allan.
I don't know.
I'm going to present this. If you come over here, we'll. Let me just ask you to hold it. Well, why don't I ask you to hold it? So please accept this plaque on behalf of the Food Cooperative Initiative and Blooming Prairie Foundation, Sam. And we're going to ask, I guess on behalf of Allan, the stage is yours, Sam.
Okay,
if you want to
cool.
share a
Thank
few
you
words.
very much. I'll try to keep it brief, I guess. Thank you, Anya. Thank you, Stuart. Can I hand that to you? Yeah, it's not double-sided. It's just single-sided. Allan would be loving each and every second of this. And my name is Sam Gallant. I'm his son, and I'm very honored as well to be here to accept this award, I guess, on his behalf. It's kind of hard to know what he would say, but I kind of do. He would thank Anya, of course, and Stuart and Marilyn for the nomination, and everyone here that he either knew or didn't know. If he didn't know you, he would get to know you tonight. Thank you to all of you all, to his friends, colleagues, family that are in attendance, and the people here that are cooperators. I guess that's what this is about, you know, keeping cooperatives alive and thriving. And he really valued hearing new ideas and using cooperatives as a tool to, you know, for community development and so much more. Allan passed away last year, and he really would have loved and enjoyed every moment of this. Those of you that knew him would definitely agree with me that this is a very generous and wonderful capstone to his life's work in community development and cooperatives. He was a believer in cooperatives. The video said so much. I don't know that I'll be able to do even half of it justice. He respected what cooperatives could do. I feel like I should insert a joke here, but I don't know any cooperative jokes. How many cooperatives does it take to screw in a light bulb? All of them. Allan went to school to learn to be a CPA. He worked in the family business, as the video said, and really had a wide sort of background to bring to the world of cooperatives. And as the video said, in '68, when Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated, it really changed his worldview, like so many others, and it really opened his eyes. He began, you know, worrying about supply chain before it was cool, and then he and he really sort of took that impetus and that initiative in the weeks and days and months and years following the riots in 1968. He really set about for equality and equity. He immediately really set off on the rest of his life. He connected with the National Council for the Business Opportunity, the Ford Foundation, really, you know, charged forward. As I was talking earlier today with, like, on that panel, if you were here, he didn't, you know, he didn't have to wait for that problem to present itself. He just went out and tried to start solving it. He really had found his calling at that point in time, and for the rest of his life devoted himself to providing economic opportunity for low-income minority people. Early on in the nominating process, Stuart had asked me what he had done, Allan had done in cooperatives that would warrant such a prestigious award and being inducted to this Cooperative Hall of Fame. And I didn't have an answer because there wasn't really one thing. It was just sort of a list of things. And I just sort of living along vicariously in his life still picked up so much of this and met so many incredible people along the way that, again, he would thank each and every one of you by name, but I just don't want to. And to keep this shorter, or I can't, I don't know everybody. I just, in need of keeping this brief and brevity, Allan liked to keep it brief. But I would say that this team over here, he would love to get to know this young group over here because that was really the future of, and he saw that of cooperatives and, you know, bringing new generations into it. But the list of his, you know, his accomplishments are long. I don't really want to get that far into it. So I'm going to cut that part out of my speech. So Alice, but aside to say that I will say, though, that the Blooming Prairie Foundation and FCI were truly his most proudest accomplishments later in his life. He loved taking family to the meetings because he needed people to travel with him because he couldn't see at all. I don't know if you knew him. So he would take, you know, grandchildren and children and others to the meetings for Blooming Prairie Foundation and FCI. And the cooperative spirit has definitely been passed on to his subsequent generations and everyone that knew him. And I would also be remiss if I didn't mention his wife, Carol, my mother, who, what is the saying? Behind every strong man is a way better woman. And she really was a partner in all of his crimes and probably mostly responsible. So this award is actually going to her, and she's going to hang it on his wall. Thank you all so very much. He really would be in tears. Thank you.
Stay up here. Thank you very much, Sam. Sam Gallant.
Thank you. Well, that's beautiful. Thank you. Wow. I think I'm good. I'm good. I got it. You dropped that. We're good. We're good. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you for sharing your dad with the cooperative movement. Our next inductee devoted his career to advancing cooperatives here and abroad. Please turn your attention now to the screen for the video of the life and career of Paul Hazen.
Paul Hazen is a visionary leader who sees opportunity for strength and growth through cooperation in every endeavor of life, whether it's supporting cooperative development internationally or improving the purchasing power of his local church. Paul shows people how to build economic power by working together. The roots of Paul's faith in the power of cooperation are set deep in the rich collaborative culture of southwestern Wisconsin. Paul's hometown is the village of Wazeeka, named after an indigenous leader of the Kickapoo tribe. In a community of 700 people where working together is a necessity of life, progress requires cooperation. A sign outside of the local high school says, "It takes a village," a daily reminder of reality in a town so small. In every aspect of life, the spirit of mutual aid that makes the Upper Midwest a vibrant co-op environment helped shape Paul's vision of his future. Whether the project was building a church or improving the high school, he observed neighbors making collective decisions toward a common good. Paul's parents, Leslie and Audrey Hazen, served as leaders in the community and in their church, setting an example for Paul and his two brothers. Leslie Hazen was a volunteer fireman who owned a candy wholesale business. Paul's dad was a member of the Lions Club and the Electric Co-op and served as treasurer of Wazeeka United Methodist Church for 40 years. Paul learned a critical leadership skill from his father, how to identify a person's individual strengths and build on them. Audrey Hazen ran the household while her boys were young and became a medical transcriber when her boys graduated. At Wazeeka High School, Paul was the kid who did everything. He was involved in sports, played in the band, and led the student council. He sang in the church choir, represented his peers on the church council, and even joined the forensics team. With the help of his English teacher, Mrs. Eberly, he learned to speak confidently and argue persuasively. In every pursuit, he followed the example of his parents and his community, stepping in to step up and finding his leadership potential along the way. At the University of Wisconsin, where he studied business and finance, Paul pursued an interest in politics. He volunteered in the campaign office of his local congressman, Al Baldus. For Paul, joining the congressman's staff after graduation in 1978 was the luckiest thing that had ever happened to him. It was through his work with Al Baldus that Paul first engaged with cooperatives, driving his boss to farmer co-op, electric co-op, and credit union meetings. Paul observed that inclusive businesses with a social purpose could thrive, a lesson that guided his career. After leaving his legislative post, Paul returned home to begin his work with cooperatives, first as executive director of Kickapoo Valley Association, a shared services cooperative of 9 municipalities, and later as executive director of Rural Housing, Inc., where he developed co-ops and affordable housing projects. Meanwhile, he ran for local office, winning an election for county clerk in 1982. In 1987, Paul was recruited to join NCBA CLUSA by 2 former mentors and future Hall of Fame inductees, Judy Z. Watts and Rod Nielsestuen. For 25 years, Paul held key positions, including Vice President of Member Services and Director of Consumer Cooperatives, Vice President of Public Policy, and ultimately, Chief Executive Officer. At NCBA CLUSA, Paul focused on 3 major objectives: elevating the co-op model nationally and internationally, strengthening co-op identity, and diversifying co-op leadership. His achievements in all 3 areas left a lasting impact on current co-op culture. A tireless advocate before Congress, Paul helped establish federal legislation promoting rural co-op development. He influenced the formation of a national network of co-op development centers and initiated national research into the impact of co-ops on the U.S. economy. Under his leadership, NCBA CLUSA's cooperative development portfolio grew from $8 million to over $30 million annually. Recognizing an opportunity to build co-op identity on the internet, Paul spearheaded a year-long campaign to obtain a top-level domain for cooperatives. .coop has become a coveted identifier of the co-op advantage worldwide. In his current position as Executive Director of the Overseas Cooperative Development Council, Paul continues to champion and promote effective international cooperative development. Although his work has international impact, Paul looks to exploit the co-op advantage in his local community as well. As the chair of the D.C. Limited Equity Housing Task Force, he works with the D.C. City Council, technical assistance providers, limited equity housing experts around the country, and members of the limited equity housing co-ops in D.C. to provide affordable housing to residents. As his church in Washington, D.C. struggled with high prices for electricity and other needs, Paul organized 12 congregations to aggregate demand and negotiate prices. Later, he pioneered a cooperative solar initiative for nonprofits that secured more than $5 million for members. Participating in a vibrant worship community continues to be central to Paul's life. He attends Foundry United Methodist Church in Washington, D.C. with his partner of 12 years, Martin Rossell. A computer database programmer, Martin is the musical person in their relationship. He recently returned to the cello and sings in several choruses in D.C. Martin and Paul enjoy cycling the trails near their beach house in Rehoboth, Delaware. Paul is generous with his knowledge and quick to share his expertise. He serves on the boards of Rochdale Capital and the Community Purchasing Alliance Cooperative. Previous board service includes National Cooperative Bank, Capital Impact Partners, International Cooperative Alliance, Consumer Federation of America, and others. Known as a gifted communicator devoted to elevating the cooperative voice domestically and internationally, Paul is a recipient of the Cooperative Communicators Association Communicator of the Year Award for being a visionary leader determined to promote the cooperative business model and principles in a world that often dismisses both. We honor Paul Hazen tonight with induction into the Cooperative Hall of Fame.
I'd like to now ask Alex Serrano from NCBA CLUSA and Paul Hazen to join me on the podium for the presentation. Alex, would you please say a few words and present the recognition to Paul?
Good evening. Thank you so much. It's all true, actually, everything that you saw, and much more. I'm from NCBA, CLUSA, but also on the board of OCDC, the U.S. Overseas Cooperative Development Council. And we're so proud to have Paul become a member of the Cooperative Hall of Fame. It was a long-term do. I actually would say that Paul has had so many accomplishments in what we heard today that I actually was thinking if his parents were to rename him, I bet you they'll give him in his middle name Co-op something, you know? It'd be Paul Co-op Hazen. But I've known Paul Hazen for almost 3 decades, and I know how much of his life really has been devoted to this common cause that we have, whether it's here in the United States or around the world. We worked together at NCBA for the first 20 years, and since 2012, working together through OCDC. The list of accomplishments you saw, it's really long, and you've heard about many of them tonight. I remember I was just coming back from Africa, where I was for many years, and when I came, the first thing that I remember Paul telling all of us, he was going to get co-op domain, which we all thought at that time there was only .gov, .com, .education. Anyway, it seemed to be a very difficult endeavor, but I think he worked the phones. We actually have a Brazilian from OCB here, from the cooperative, and he got it done. You know, it took a lot of hard work. That was a major accomplishment for Paul. Thank you so much. He also helped, as you saw, to not only to get the co-op domain, but then you had to manage this. Now you can get it, and then how are you going to manage? So raise the funds and set up .coop as an internet that has really played a role, has become profitable, and continues, frankly, to strengthen our ecosystem. Can you imagine going back to the days where our email will be .com like we used to have? At least I don't see that world, so it's very important. At OCDC, you all heard, Paul's leadership has had a strong impact. He has been instrumental in near doubling the resources allocated by the U.S. government, U.S. Congress in this case, to cooperative development around the world. The work of the research group that he also created has been successful in demonstrating the impact of the cooperative business model, increasing the visibility of cooperatives around the world, while also making active research a major priority for OCDC and for all of us that are members of OCDC. There's 10 of us that are part of OCDC. More recently, what started as a cooperative leaders led by Paul Hazen, working together to address exorbitant energy bills, which frankly we need a lot more, particularly right now where we are, has turned into the Community Purchasing Alliance, which today is a thriving, self-sustaining cooperative with 20 million in annual purchasing, with a national peer network of 400 plus community institutions, 800 member owners in the DC area. CPA is here tonight with its own table in honor of Paul. Foundry UMC, one of CPA's first and largest members, is also here tonight. In closing, I would like to offer a quote about Paul from another one of our co-op heroes, David Thompson. In David's words, Paul is a most marvelous human being who strives with every ounce to make this a better world. We should be grateful that he shows cooperatives as the way to do it. We're all so much richer for his contribution. Thank you, Paul.
And now, we're going to ask you to please accept this plaque on behalf of the U.S. Overseas Cooperative Development Council. So here is our plaque.
Thank you.
I'll let you get a photo. Paul, the stage is yours.
Well, thank you very much, and good evening, cooperators. All I can say is I certainly had the hair for politics back when I was younger, so it was great to see those pictures. I want to thank the Cooperative Development Foundation for this honor and induction of the Cooperative Hall of Fame. And I want to congratulate the other inductees this evening, Ella Jo, Allan, Gary, and Dan. And I also want to thank my Hall of Fame Planning Committee for all their hard work. I've been very fortunate throughout my career in the cooperative movement to work with colleagues that have a vision for a world where no one's left behind. People who have put their values into practice and have a passion for addressing economic and social justice. Congressman Al Baldus was one of the first of these colleagues. Working for him introduced me to cooperatives. We would visit cooperatives in western Wisconsin, and I was, quite frankly, blown away. Here's a value-based business with a social purpose. I soon met two other Baldus staffers, as you heard, Rod Nielsen and Judy Zewatz, now both members of the Cooperative Hall of Fame. This is where I found my passion for cooperative development. I thought my career was going to be politics and public service. Washington, D.C. is filled with people like me, former student council presidents who think they're one step away from becoming president of the United States. I soon realized that the cooperative movement, with its values of self-help, self-responsibility, democracy, equity, equality, and solidarity, was the path for me. I learned these values at my church, as you heard, from people in my hometown, and from my many mentors like Russ Notar, Chuck Snyder, and Stan Dreyer. I was very lucky to know Stan Dreyer. He taught me a lot about cooperatives. And Stan would tell a story about Jerry Voorhees, the former member of Congress and a longtime president of CLUSA. Jerry received a letter from a recent graduate of UCLA, and the graduate asked him, he says, "I want to work for a cooperative. Do you know of any cooperatives hiring?" And Jerry's response was, "If you want to work for a cooperative, go start one." And so that is advice I've taken to heart. If you want more justice, just and inclusive society, go start a cooperative. As many of you know in this room, starting a cooperative is not easy. It's like planting a seed. At the beginning, you don't see much because the seed grows down into the earth, and it takes a while for the plant to go up to reach to the sky. So I really admire all the people in this room who have spent their careers working in cooperative development, both domestically and internationally. So thank you very much for all your hard work. I've been fortunate to have a career that allowed me to have an impact on people's lives around the world, and I thank NCBA and OCDC for the privilege to work in international cooperative development. We are often asked by skeptics, why co-ops? And an experience visiting a cooperative in Zambia reminded me why. I was walking down a road with a farmer, and he was showing me his lush crops on one side of the road. And I looked over to the other side of the road, and it was clearly these co-ops were not going to produce much yield that year. And I asked the farmer, well, what's the difference? Well, that field over there that's not doing well, that's my neighbor's field. And he decided not to join the cooperative. I joined the cooperative, and now I can feed my family all year round. I can send my kids to school, and I have access to health care. So the answer to the skeptics is, that's the answer right there. As you know, I worked for NCBA for 25 years, doing my part to advance cooperatives as a catalyst for economic and social justice. As the video said, at the same time, I was active in Foundry Church. I think I've been on every committee in the church, and we have a lot of committees. Often the topic of a committee meeting was, how do we raise more money so we can do more to serve more people and help people that are disenfranchised? And I would think to myself, I spent my day at NCBA working on the same issue. And then at night here, I'm working at Foundry. Here are two groups of people. What if we could get them to work together? Well, it all came together a few years ago in the Community Purchasing Alliance, where we are making a difference. CPA is making systemic change to the economy here in Washington, D.C. by putting our values into action. Now, I'm so proud of the people at CPA, the staff, and my colleagues who've made that co-op a success. And what I really love about the experience is seeing new people coming into the cooperative movement and then watching them drink the co-op Kool-Aid and become real believers. I'm so honored to be recognized this evening for my contributions to the cooperative movement, but none of it would have been possible without the support and hard work of my NCBA and OCDC colleagues and the many boards of directors whom I've served. I thank you all to the bottom of my heart. Over the years, I've learned about the power of cooperatives. I've learned a lot about the power of the cooperative movement. And the lesson is simple. Never forget that each of us have benefited from the warmth of a fire built by someone else and drunk from a well dug by others. So I want to thank the Cooperative Development Foundation and congratulate the other inductees. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. For our next presentation, a humble and passionate leader, Gary Oakland, advocated for member-centric services, empowering employees, and increasing access to financial services in marginalized communities as he helped grow BECU. Please turn your attention to the screen for the video honoring Gary Oakland.
Some eyebrows may have been raised when 33-year-old Gary Oakland was tapped to lead BECU in 1986. But Mary Oakland was not surprised at all. She predicted his rise years before when her husband became director of finance at the credit union. "You know," she said, "you're going to be CEO there someday." Gary himself was surprised, but Mary recognized in her husband qualities that would make him one of the most influential leaders of the credit union movement: humility, authenticity, and vision. Born in 1952, Gary Oakland was raised in Ellensburg, Washington, a small college and rodeo town. His father, Erling, started his career as a teacher and later became an administrator. His mother, May, worked as a secretary in the school system. Both Erling and May belonged to the local credit union for educators. Older sisters, Sandy and Connie, were like second mothers to Gary, guiding and protecting their much younger brother. At Interlake High School, Gary played sports and held leadership roles in student government. Between his family and his town, Gary was nurtured by a community that supported and protected him. It was a culture he would later replicate at BECU. Gary studied economics at Washington State University, spending a formative semester studying comparative economic systems at the University of Aarhus in Denmark. At a friend's wedding the day after his return from Europe, Gary met his future wife. He was surprised to be challenged by the maid of honor. "I bet you don't know who I am," she said. Mary Horay and Gary Oakland grew up down the street from each other, but their paths seldom crossed. They married 3 years later. Gary and Mary adopted 2 children, Emily and Eric, who are now 31 and 28 years old. Gary's post-college job hunt began during a deep regional recession. He was interested in banking, but no banks were hiring. Hearing from his mom about an opening for a teller at Seattle Telco Credit Union, Gary applied. The job at Seattle Telco may have been a choice prompted by necessity, but the student of economics discovered he liked being part of a business centered on service to the community. Gary joined BECU as Director of Finance in 1980, as the credit union struggled to be of service to a membership diminished by layoffs at Boeing. Fortunately, the environment for credit unions was improving as Congress began to permit direct competition with banks. BECU membership grew as the credit union offered new services, including checking accounts, ATM cards, IRAs, CDs, credit cards, home equity loans, and financial counseling. As he had at Seattle Telco, Gary found a supportive mentor at BECU. Bud Jewell offered his new director opportunities to try different roles in the credit union, allowing Gary to understand the needs of members and to imagine how he might help. Gary became CEO in 1986, 1 year after the 50th anniversary of the credit union. It was a brilliant act of trust in a young servant leader. Under his watch, BECU grew to become the 4th largest credit union in the country, with a membership of 700,000 and $10 billion in assets. But growth for growth's sake was never the point. It's all about the member, Gary said, setting a tone that permanently defined the culture at BECU. Guided by a member-first philosophy, Gary identified innovative ways to support members during times of crisis, including a low-cost loan for striking Boeing workers and victims of natural disasters. Understanding the importance of financial literacy, he created a financial counseling department with programs designed to help members and their families take control of their finances to achieve their goals. Mindful of the benefits of his own education, Gary created the BECU Foundation to recognize and support student members. Since 1995, BECU has awarded more than $3.4 million in scholarships to 1,251 student members. One day at a foundation luncheon, Gary met a Boeing employee who thanked him for facilitating a loan for an adoption years before. As an adoptive parent himself, Gary had been happy to hear BECU had helped. He was overjoyed to learn that the employee's child was a new recipient of a foundation scholarship. Believing that financial literacy should begin early, Gary raised the first $500,000 to fund the PBS syndicated show Biz Kids. Other credit unions followed his example, contributing $2.6 million to support the Emmy award-winning program. Gary expanded BECU's commitment to improving the financial lives of members to other cooperatives. He helped establish 2 low-income designated credit unions and located funds to support 24 others. He also created a credit union service organization that provides mortgage solutions to 600 credit unions. In recognition of his generosity and selflessness as a credit union leader, Gary was awarded the Herb Wegner Award for Lifetime Achievement in 2014. He is also the 2011 recipient of the NWCUA's Mark of Excellence, that association's highest honor. Having instituted a spirit of generosity, inclusion, and recognition at BECU, Gary retired in 2012. He and Mary now split their time between Palm Desert, California, and Edmonds, Washington, where they can be close to their children and enjoy time with their 5-year-old grandson, Caden. For growing BECU into one of America's largest credit unions while demonstrating the deepest commitment to the principle of people helping people. For leading from a place of humility, fairness, and compassion. For inspiring others to grow, think differently, and achieve their own goals. We honor Gary Oakland tonight with induction into the Cooperative Hall of Fame.
I'd like to ask Debbie Wiggy from BECU to come join me for the presentation. Debbie, would you please say a few words of recognition of Gary?
Thank you, everyone. It's a great honor to be here tonight and to see all the wonderful other inductees into this prestigious award. My name is Debbie Wiggy. I'm the Cooperative Community Advocate at BECU. I had the pleasure of serving underneath Gary for 22 years of his 36 years of his illustrious career. BECU is especially proud that Gary Oakland is being inducted into this CDF Cooperative Hall of Fame. I had the privilege, like I said, of working alongside him, so I got to see firsthand the impact that he had. He was a steadfast believer in the cooperative principles. You know, it's mentioned that he was a member first person, and that's so true. He was known for saying that, how does this help the member? And if you couldn't answer that question, the decision could not go forward. He also did not like when we were one of the largest credit unions in the nation. And he did not like it if you talked about our asset size. He said, you know, we're not about being a big credit union. We're actually just an average credit union. We just happen to serve a lot of members. So he was very much a believer in the cooperative principles. He also, you heard about the biz kids. He was one of the first enthusiastic people to jump up and say, this brings financial education and entrepreneurial education to young people into the homes of people. We have to be there. Credit unions have to support this. And so he was literally just jumped at the chance of being able to support that. He also was instrumental in awarding and supporting the fact that BECU would be a sort of a big brother, big sister to a low-income serving credit union called Express Credit Union in the Northwest, who is specifically designed to serve low-income communities, and that relationship still continues today. He also did some things with NASCUS, served on many different boards, but he was, it was his influence and his pressure that sort of said, that, you know, made it possible for credit unions to still have a dual chartership, which actually makes it very possible for credit unions to continue to grow and to serve more and more members. He's such a humble leader. He was more known for, if you met him in the hallway or in a coffee room, he would want to know how you were, how your family was. He didn't want to talk about work at all. So he was just a wonderful person to be around. He never sought the limelight. He definitely did not seek the limelight like tonight in this kind of prestigious award. He could not be with us here tonight, which is probably a good thing because he'd be extremely uncomfortable. Matter of fact, he's probably saying, stop talking about me and talk more about the other people that have been awarded, because he believed more in the fact that we should celebrate the cooperative nature of what we do and not individual specifics. He certainly didn't think that he was worthy of something like this, but we all know differently because it was his different thinking, his belief. Oh, I'm getting emotional. In that cooperative spirit that made it really the credit union that we have today being, like I said, we happen to be a large credit union only because we serve a lot of people, and that's really what we're all about. So it's my honor and it's BECU's honor to say that Gary Oakland is being recognized for the man that he was, but also for the thinker that he was, and the belief in pushing forward those thoughts. So congratulations, Gary, and congratulations to all the other winners.
Debbie, I'm going to give you this. And please accept this plaque on behalf of BECU for Gary Oakland. Thank you so much, Debbie. As Debbie mentioned, Gary couldn't be here with us today, but we do have a video from him. So we're going to cue up the video.
Good evening, and thank you. This is a great award, and I very much appreciate receiving it. I'd just like to say a few words There was a group of credit union leaders that used to hang out together. And a lot of it had to do with we enjoyed each other's company. But more importantly, it was because we shared a belief that if you hung with good people, good things could happen. And that's what I'm most thankful for about my career. I was surrounded by good people. The good people start with my family. It extends to peers and associates in the credit union world that help me live the credit union philosophy of people helping people. And the people that I worked with at BECU, they helped guide me and the credit union to deliver things for our members that will make their lives better. Because that's what it's all about. It's the member. That group of credit union leaders that I talked about earlier, we would start every meeting and end every meeting with a reminder that it's the member. That's what it's all about. And it's the employees that deliver that member experience that creates the good that we leave in our wake. So I hope that this award is indicative of at least that I was a good person and that in some small way, we made the lives of our members better. Thank you.
A good person indeed. Thank you very much. And now our fifth award presentation. A stickler for excellence, our final inductee has helped bring electricity to many parts of the world. Please turn your attention to the screen for the video honoring Dan Waddle.
Few inductees into the Cooperative Hall of Fame have had the global impact of Dr. Dan Waddle. His team at NRECA International has brought light to some of the most remote and economically challenged places in the world, from Uganda to Argentina and from Peru to the Philippines. With a mission to power communities and empower people, NRECA International has been a pioneer and leader in global rural electrification for 60 years, providing safe, reliable, affordable electricity to 160 million people in 45 countries. Dan Waddle has directed that effort for almost 40 years. It's an astonishing career, spanning 4 decades, 40 countries, and impacting 65 million people. The story of how a young engineer from Virginia Tech became the leader of a worldwide effort to turn the lights on in rural communities is the story of cooperative leadership at its best. Dan's tenure at NRECA International began when he agreed to lead an electrification project in Bolivia. He didn't know then that 1-year collaboration would become a 40-year vocation, but an early interest in energy and agriculture, as well as a peripatetic youth, made his career choice a natural fit. Born in 1955 into a military family, Dan grew up with his siblings David, Michael, and Darlene. While the Waddles lived in 8 different states during his childhood, the family's experience in Ethiopia left the deepest impression on Dan. Peering out over the wall surrounding the military compound where his family was stationed, Dan observed a jarringly different reality on the other side. The disparity between his daily life and his neighbors felt unjust to the 8-year-old, a response that guided his choices later in life. Dan attended 9 schools before beginning college in 1973. At Peninsula Catholic High School in Virginia, Dan began tinkering with farm machinery, leading to a keen and lasting interest in agriculture. Dan also met the love of his life at Peninsula Catholic, Barbara Petty. Upon graduation, they both attended nearby Christopher Newport University. Dan transferred a year later to Virginia Tech to study agricultural engineering, and Barbara joined him the following year. The couple married in 1978 when Dan was 23. While working on his bachelor's and master's degrees at Tech, Dan found a job as an engineering specialist with the Virginia Cooperative Extension Service. In 1980, Dan received an offer to teach engineering to agricultural extension specialists at Egerton College in Kenya. Appreciating the opportunity to be of service in the kind of rural communities he lived near as a boy, Dan accepted the job. He, Barbara, and their 6-month-old son, Tolson, moved to Kenya. After 2 years in Kenya, the family returned to the United States, where Dan enrolled in a doctoral program at Texas A&M, with a focus on developing advanced engineering skills in small-scale power generation. Seeing an opportunity to test his ideas about sustainable electrification in remote communities, Dan agreed to manage a USAID-financed project in the Philippines in 1983. The family remained in the Philippines for 3.5 years. After returning to Texas to complete his doctoral degree in 1987, Dan accepted a position at Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Tennessee, where he managed a series of renewable energy electrification projects in Latin America and Southeast Asia. Dan officially joined NRECA International in 1991 with a firm belief in the ability of electric cooperatives to power economic growth. He and his team share the knowledge and experience of the 80-year-old U.S. electric cooperative movement, creating community-owned and operated utilities around the world. In Bangladesh, NRECA International played a key role in launching the electric cooperative movement in the 1970s. Today, 125 million people are served by 79 electric cooperatives. Since NRECA's involvement, the average annual income for Bangladeshi homes increased by 250%. In Uganda, Dan's team is working with national leaders to implement a national energy strategy, which includes off-grid energy systems to be deployed by cooperatives in the most remote areas. The NRECA International team begins every project by listening, seeking to understand local economic conditions. Then, they build practical solutions with lifelong impact. It's a realistic, disciplined approach grounded in a financial and moral obligation to each community. Dan asks, can we tell this community we're going to be by their side? For the project to proceed, the answer must be yes, even if it's for 30 years. Under Dan's leadership, NRECA International organizes member-sponsored volunteer electrification projects around the world. The effort resumed this summer in Guatemala with volunteer line workers from Oklahoma, Colorado, Arkansas, and Florida. For Dan, it's important for members to see and feel the real value of electrification in rural communities. Those who know and love Dan acknowledge his unwavering dedication to his work. Dan is blessed with a supportive family that makes the most of their time together. Barbara and Dan enjoy cooking, taking walks, and deepening their spiritual lives. With encouragement from their son Tolson, they've recently picked up skiing. Their chief joy is spending time with their adult children, Tolson, Andrea, and Michael, and their grandchildren, Calvin and Deacon Robertson. For his contributions to the global cooperative movement, for bringing light to more than 65 million people worldwide, for demonstrating leadership that begins with listening. We honor Dr. Dan Waddle tonight with induction into the Cooperative Hall of Fame.
I'd like to ask Ron Schwarto from Nobles Cooperative Electric to join me for the presentation for Dan Waddle. Ron, would you please say a few words, present the award?
Thank you. It's my honor to introduce Dan to all of you. He's last, but definitely not the least. Tens of millions of people around the world have benefited from the work that Dan has done with his team.
He's a very humble person. He chided me more than once about this award, saying it's not about me, it's about the team that I work with. And I respect that tremendously. When I first was asked to make a couple comments, I talked to Kirsty Boyette and said, I've never been to one of these events, what am I supposed to do? And she said, well, you might tell a little humorous story, but those of you that know Dan probably know that there's not a lot of humorous about Dan. He takes his mission very seriously, although I would have to say the very first time that I ever traveled with Dan, we boarded a 6 or 8 passenger plane traveling from Dominican Republic over to Haiti. And the plane, flies quite low and it's shaking quite a bit. And I look around the cabin and there's parts missing to the plane. And I notice that the window is sealed in with duct tape. And he noticed that I maybe had a little concern about this flight. And he reaches for his phone and he says, do you want to call your wife? So he does have a humorous side to him. Dan is about community development. As you saw in the video, he saw the disparity at a very young age of 8. And he has carried that with him his entire life. And as a volunteer that has worked with him on several occasions, and the hundreds of volunteers from NRECA, cooperative members that have worked with him on various projects around the world, I think the biggest impact on me has been that through Dan and through NRECA International, he has shown us what true disparity is in the world and have people can have an impact on really trying to change that aspect of our society. And I'm so proud to have been able to work with Dan. Congratulations.
And now, please accept this plaque on behalf of NRECA for Dan Waddle. Dan, take it away.
No humor, huh? It's a great friend. Well, it really is a pleasure to be here tonight. I'd like to start by thanking the Cooperative Development Foundation for sponsoring this event and for NCBA for overseeing the nomination process. I'd also like to congratulate my colleagues who are also honored here tonight. Josephine Baker, Allan Gallant, Paul Hazen, and Gary Oakland. My involvement with cooperatives would not have been as rich as it has been and rewarding without the guidance and support of my NRECA family. I'd like to acknowledge Jeffrey Connor, who's here with us tonight, and several of my colleagues who've joined us. As I consider what to share with you tonight, a few things became clear to me immediately. Each of us has to make choices in our lives, some of which are informed by our early impressions from our childhood. While my choices have been guided mostly by my professional and intellectual interests, I realized some years ago that the direction of my life was indeed guided by my need to find meaningful work and endeavors. In other words, to be guided by my heart. So I'd like to share a couple of personal stories with you. As the video showed, I grew up in a military family. Soon after my father returned from Korea in 1962, we moved to Kagnu Station, which is located on the edge of Asmara, Eritrea, and housed 5,000 military families and the military personnel. The base facilities included a K through 12 American school, stores, sports fields and facilities, and U.S.-style housing. Surrounding the Kagnu Station base was a 10-foot concrete wall. The first day that I woke up in our new house, I recall seeing a wall and I wondered why I was there. On the other side of the wall was an Eritrean community. The people there lived in mud huts and very irregular housing. They didn't have running water or toilets. They had latrine fields. They gathered wood to cook meals and water from hand pumps. The stark living conditions on the other side of the wall were very confusing for me at the time. When we learned that we were moving to Africa, all of us thought that we would see lions, elephants, and zebra. I had no idea that we would see endemic poverty just beyond the edge of our yard. And when I looked over the wall, I didn't imagine that I would one day focus my life's work on poverty alleviation. Many years later, after I completed my graduate studies, one of my professors asked me if I wanted to work in Kenya. And something clicked. I knew then that's where my professional path would lead. The first job I took was teaching at Edgerton University. That led later to a 4-year project in the Philippines, and then a position at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and eventually NRACA. In each case, I was able to use my skills and interests to design and build rural infrastructure, food and agricultural processing, energy and power systems. And each time, I was able to work directly with rural communities. What I witnessed time and again was the utterly generous, hardworking, and full-hearted nature of the rural people who had so little in resources, but such immense willingness to work together with unbridled energy and enthusiasm. So some years later, in 1991, I joined NRACA International to manage a new project in La Paz, Bolivia. Our project had significant construction financing, so we received many requests for help from communities, and we routinely had to decline these requests because we were focused on an anti-drug program. But there was one group that kept coming back to our office every week. And one of the leaders kept saying that they could see the light every night. And when he said this, I didn't quite understand what he was trying to communicate. It turned out that the leaders represented 16 communities that lived on the escarpment overlooking La Paz. So every night they would look down on La Paz and they'd see the light of the city from their dark houses. So when I realized this, I realized that we couldn't do nothing. We had to find some way of helping these 16 communities that had about 500 families in them. So we took it upon ourselves to raise funds internally from NRACA. We convinced our colleagues at USAID to allow us to use our internal engineering resources to design the project. And while this project was far smaller than any other project that we did, it actually had the most impact on me and actually on my family. Because the community members were so cooperative, they were so energized to fend for themselves, and they took what energies that they have to make their case to us. We played our role, but really it was their project. We're here tonight to celebrate cooperatives and those that support them. I learned early in my career that the most effective means to strengthen rural communities is through the cooperative business model, because it engages the collective interests of the community members to address specific needs. I also learned that cooperatives often need some form of external support. And this is a role that we have chosen at NRACA International, to support rural communities to form electric cooperative enterprises. In this capacity, I would say without any doubt that what my colleagues and I have received far exceeds what we've been able to contribute. And for that, I'm very grateful. Before I close, I wanted to acknowledge my family members. My wife, Barbara, who you saw, attended Peninsula Catholic High School with me a long time ago. My son, Tolson, my daughter, Andrea, my son, Michael, our grandson, one of our grandsons, who's at the door over there, 4 months old, and my brothers, Dave and Mike, who both traveled a long distance to be with me here tonight. I'd like to thank you all. This is a wonderful honor, and I'm very grateful.
Thank you very much, Dan. So, how are we feeling here? It's a pretty great group of inductees for 2022, don't you think? I'm going to ask again, will join me in a round of applause for all 5 of our 2022 inductees. An incredible group of leaders from whom we can learn so very, very much. Plaques commemorating tonight's inductees will join those of past inductees in the Cooperative Hall of Fame and will hang in the NCBA, CLUSA, and CDF office here in DC. So those of you worrying about how you're going to fit it into your luggage, no worries. It's going to be safe. Your plaques will be commemorated here at the Hall of Fame. The videos and biographies of the 2022 inductees will be added to the Hall of Fame website, and you can find that at heroes.coop. And that really brings us to the end of our program. Once again, a huge congratulations goes out to all of the inductees and their families who have shared them with us over the years. We are grateful for your leadership, your dedication, and all of the accomplishments that truly inspire us in our work as we go forward. So thank you very, very much. Thank you. And one little bit of housekeeping. Is that for me? A little bit of housekeeping. We ask that the inductees, their families, and other plaque recipients go to the First Amendment Lounge for photographs as soon as we adjourn. And we'd like our first photo to be of the new inductees together, so please don't leave without going to the First Amendment Lounge. On behalf of the Cooperative Development Foundation, thank you. Is that for you?